What's involved in selecting and working with a credible, well-trained health, wellness, and performance coach? These days, it seems like there's a coach around every corner. Social media, new titles on LinkedIn, flyers in the gym. But how do you know who's credible, who's trained, who's experienced, who's good at their job, and who simply, took a weekend class or something? How do we know what to look for? How do we know what the coaching experience should be like? And why would we do it in the first place? With AI, you can just get all the information you want, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to have two nationally board certified health and wellness coaches on the podcast here with us. We're going to talk about questions they get, inquiries that they've heard other coaches dig into, interactions they've had with clients of their own. If you're a current health and wellness coach, this is going to be your opportunity to maybe think through, how am I presenting myself to the world in a way that's different from the person that they're not really trained or they just love fitness or whatever. You're a well-trained health and wellness coach. You're, in most cases, a nationally board certified health and wellness coach. I think you're going to garner some information on how can you clarify that for potential clients. If you're an employee, if you're just looking for ideas for your own employees to help them improve their lives, their energy levels, their sleep, their fitness, their health as a whole, you're going to pick up some ideas. If you're an individual who's hearing all about coaching and the value it might have, you're going to learn what should you be looking for? What is that all about? And if you just happen to pull this episode up because you like to listen to the Coaching Lab and you've tuned into some of the other episodes, I think you're going to have some fun learning, well, who cares? Because with AI, you can get all the information you want. Exactly. If a coach is only providing information, if it's only transactional in nature, then there is no value to that. Good coaching involves transformation. Behavior change is not about information. It's about application. If we simply want information, we don't need a coach. That's not what most of us need. Transactional coaching has almost no value anymore. If it's simply information, there are alternatives. Transformational coaching has never been more valuable. At a time when we've lost connection, we've lost direction, we've lost vision, an effective, well-trained, experienced coach can change our lives. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Thank you for joining us here on the Coaching Lab podcast. My name's Dr. Brad Cooper. I am going to generally step aside for this episode and just let you listen to these two amazing people who have been coaching for a very long time. They bring so much to the table, and you'll sense that as you hear them conversing. If you ever have questions about coaching, either from the training side where you're thinking, hey, I think I'd like to learn more about how to become a credible coach, you can reach out to us, results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com. If you're an employer or an EAP provider looking for ideas for your employee benefits program or those you serve, reach out. Same questions. We can walk through how to find the right partner for those needs, goals, outcomes that you're seeking. Same email, results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com, and I'm happy to follow up with you. Thanks so much for joining us. Now let's jump into this latest episode of the Coaching Lab podcast. All right, so here we go, everybody. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is not scripted. We did not lay out this, okay, you say this and then I'll say this. Basically, Leigh and Sabryna are just going to roll with it. They're going to talk about, as I said during the intro, they both come to the table with extensive experience. They're both nationally board certified health and wellness coaches. They both are mentors for other coaches. They both coach a lot of people on their own. So there's a lot that they're bringing to the table, and I'm going to sit back and do my best to be you, listener. And when there's something that maybe needs a little clarification or, let's build on that a little bit more, I'll step in. But otherwise, I'm just going to sit back, let them roll with it. So with that, Sabryna, do you want to kind of set the stage for where this is going? And then the two of you can just rock and roll.
Yeah, thank you. Leigh and I were thinking it would be really fun if we kind of shared exactly what we hear from our clients many times. And the reason why we want to do that is because we want to help clarify what we do. So the thing that happens many times is it happens to me anyway. I will walk into an event or I will walk into a casual place and people ask you what you do. And I say, oh, well, I'm a health and wellness coach. And typically they say the same thing to me. They say something like, oh, okay, as a health coach, you're going to tell me what to eat and create a workout plan for me. That's what you do, right, Leigh?
Yeah, I would say that I get a similar response when I walk into a room, unless it is a room full of health coaches, which is not the majority of the time the room that I'm walking into or the client session. So yes, I would agree with Sabryna that there's this conception of like kind of an idea of what a health coach is, right? Like we're going to give a plan, we're going to direct in some way, we're going to tell them what to do, which makes sense because, when we think about health and wellness, there are tons of plans and tons of strategies. And so people come into this space with an idea of what to expect or an idea of what we do. So I would say that when someone says that to me in a professional setting, so if someone's like, yeah, this is what you do, you're going to give me a plan or you're going to be a personal trainer, I say that I softly kind of say, sort of. And more so what we do as health coaches is work alongside you to build upon the strengths that you have within these spaces and talk about what's most important to you about your health in order for you to be able to build that into a sustainable plan for yourself with you in the driver's seat. So I would say in like a professional setting, that's kind of how I describe it. And then if you have a client who is like, okay, just tell me what to do, or they're coming primed for a session, it's a similar process, but it's almost like a role play of sorts where it's like, yeah, I could tell you what to do, right? Because there's all these things out there. And what would you think about this approach? And so it's an invitation to work alongside a person with them really taking ownership of the steps that we take together.
Yeah, that's so good. That the unknown when we're in that professional setting is really interesting because you kind of mentioned it, Leigh. A lot of times we hear from the client and they say, wait, what do you mean you're not giving me the plan? But that's why I contacted you. That's what I thought coaching was. Just tell me what to do. So I'm curious as to what you say when they say, just tell me what to do, Leigh.
The answer is not always the same, but I would say that the question I lean on is most often like, what have you tried or what has worked well in the past? So I think it's like an invitation to be curious about the process, right? And not like righting the wrong or righting the misconception, but opening this opportunity for curiosity. So I asked them like, what have you tried that led you to this space? Like, what have you tried already? And then we go into kind of what's worked well, but it's a curiosity that seems to me, in my experience, to bridge this frustration gap of like, just tell me what to do and I'm going to go do it. So that's kind of where I start. Sometimes.
That's really true. I think the curiosity, that word is really important because I think on the other hand, we also see clients that think, well, do I even need to talk to a coach if I have a doctor? Well, I've got a therapist. I got a personal trainer. Why do I need you, the health coach? And so it would be great if you could explain how that's different, kind of along the same line with the whole curiosity concept.
Yeah. So how we work alongside doctors and therapists or personal trainers, or how we are different. What are you thinking? Which direction?
I'm kind of thinking, kind of sharing with the client. They don't understand why do they need us if they have a doctor, if they have a therapist, if they have a personal trainer?
Yeah. And that's a question that I would say I get a lot because, in different settings, from a health coach landscape, there are many different settings and environments that we're coaching in. So there are sometimes, coaching sessions where they've come from a doctor as part of an incentive program, for example. So like you come from your doctor as an individual and they've said, your blood pressure's high, you need to exercise more and you need to eat healthier. And that can feel overwhelming if you go in for your annual physical and you're told these things, to then think about, okay, what in the world am I going to do to implement this into my routine when I've got like a 12-hour day? There's no space for this. So I would say, like, to them, a health coach helps you put those pieces into action, help you work towards, maybe it's managing your blood pressure or incorporating physical activity. But what's at the forefront is what's most important to you about making that change. So yes, your doctor has recommendations, right, from a clinical perspective that can help improve the quality of your life. And we, as a health coach and a client or individual, can work together to determine what's most important to you about this. Is managing your blood pressure important to you? Or is it creating boundaries from the 12-hour workday so you're able to do things for yourself and then inherently lower your blood pressure? So I would say, if that answers your question, Sabryna, that we work alongside those recommendations to help you take action towards the things that matter most to you within regards to your health.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. And I think that what comes to mind even for me is that I think sometimes our clients get overwhelmed with there being so many experts in their lives telling them what to do and what they should do. And so there's a lot of shoulds that they're hearing. And I think a lot of times they're thinking, oh my gosh, but you're a coach. Aren't you going to tell me more shoulds? And like, what would you say to that person?
That's such a good question. And so valid too, that it can be overwhelming to think about, like, all of these things that you should put into your routine. And I think it goes back to this curiosity standpoint of, like, supporting an individual in taking off maybe the should hat and thinking about, okay, what do I want my routine and day-to-day to look like? What can I do to work towards this idea that I have for what's most important to me about my health and my life? So I think instead of trying to incorporate all the things, we work alongside an individual to help them determine, like, what's the vision that they have? Right? You can take all of this information in and you can take all of these recommendations and you can take all of these, I should be exercising or I should be eating. And if you kind of turn down the volume and all of that, and then just ask yourself, like, what do I want? What's most important to me? What makes me feel my best? And I think that is a super valuable thing to be a partner in for a client and an individual, is to provide this space for them to explore, okay, what can I do or do I want to do in my life to improve my health? And so what does that look like?
I've got a quick follow-up on that for both of you. How often, what you're describing, I love it, but I'm also in this world with you. But it seems like the person listening who's never participated in a true, credible coaching session before is going, wait, now what? How often do you find that after the first session or during the first session, that client is just like their brain's blowing up with these possibilities because they came in expecting a should, expecting a list, expecting 3 more to-dos, and they come out of it with a clarity about what matters to them, not what matters to their spouse or their teacher or their coach or whatever, their football coach or whatever, but what matters to them and how that fits into their broader vision. So I'm just curious, how often do you feel like there's this element of surprise? After a couple of sessions, they know you're coming and they know what to expect and they're excited and they're ready to rock and roll. But it seems like that first session, you probably have a lot of, this is so different than what I thought it was going to be.
100%.
I think it goes back. Well, I think it goes back to when Leigh was talking about bringing curiosity. And I think that is something that the doctor doesn't necessarily bring.
Sure.
And the personal trainer doesn't necessarily bring. And so I think what I have seen when we're in that first or second session with the client, they are mind blown, like you just said, Brad, because we're curious about what's important to them on a daily basis, or what does their life look like on a daily basis? And what types of things seem reasonable to start with them? And where have they had success in the past? And all of a sudden, this client is thinking, what? You're not telling me what I should do?
Yeah.
You're
Powerful.
curious. You're curious about my life and what I actually want.
Well, it almost sounds like being seen is a big part of this because, and our son's a doc, so I'm not picking on the docs here. I come out of the healthcare world. That's not their role. They're reviewing tests. They're looking at biometrics. They're providing what is the script that we need to move forward with. But you're coming to them and you are seeing them for who they really are, and maybe in a way that they've never even tapped into themselves, let alone the people around them. So is that a big part of it? Is all of a sudden you're there seeing them for who they are and helping them see themselves for who they really are?
I think too, and not comparing them to everybody else. So all we're doing when we walk alongside them is just having them think, what's possible for them as a unique individual,
right?
And that
not for their sister or their brother or their parent.
Blown.
Yeah.
Yes, because they've gone along all this time again with the shoulds and comparing them.
The scoreboard
to things that they shouldn't be comparing themselves to.
Right. That's beautiful.
I kind of want to ask Leigh, I think what we're trying to share with everybody, kind of like shine a light on what we do. What is a recent light bulb moment that a client maybe recently had with you? With regards to our process of coaching?
Yeah. So that's such a good question. And it kind of stems from the conversation that you and Brad were talking about with this idea of like curiosity. Because I find that sometimes when you go into a session and someone is thinking that you're going to tell them what to do or tell them to take something out of their life, like cut out sugar or exercise more, there's resistance, right? Because they're just being told I wouldn't say it's always punitive because, the healthcare field's wanting to come alongside as well, but it can feel like, oh my gosh, why can't I just do all of these things? And so I did have a session where I had a client and they were a little bit resistant in the beginning. They were like, yeah, I know I missed my biometric by 2 points. Like, I know I need to reduce my blood pressure, my cholesterol. Like, I know these things. I know that's what you're going to tell me to do. And I know you're going to tell me I need to eat healthier. And there was a lot of resistance. And I took this, I think sometimes we can we bringing a level of like humanness to a coaching partnership, I think is important in my opinion. And so what I did was I kind of did a role play with them. And I was like, okay, before we dive into this session, which direction do you think we should go? We could do option one, where I say, here's some educational resources. Here's how you can lower your blood pressure. Here's how, what to put into your life. Or option two would be that I ask you, out of all of these things in your biometric, what stood out to you as an area you might like to explore? And you're really in the control of the conversation. I was like, which one would you be more likely to develop some strategies that feel good to you? And they said option two. So then it was this like invitation of an opportunity to go into that process, but it was a fun, low stress environment. So coming into the session, it was resistance. You're going to tell me all these things. I was like, you know what? I could. What about this option? So it was just the invitation to come into that process, which I think like a consent to say, okay, let's explore it this way. And it was a really good session. So that really stood out to me recently.
That's so fun that you offered it in that way. Would you like to do option one, where I educate you and then tell you what to do? Or option two, which then you described as coaching? That's so tricky of you, Leigh. Ooh.
Ooh. Well, sometimes it can feel overwhelming when there's a new process, right? So I think if we're able to show someone in a way that meets them where they are and allows them to see, okay, here are these options of how I can explore my health, then they're taking the ownership, So I think it's just a different way to explain kind of our elevator pitch per se of what we do and how we can work with people in a way that they're going to understand.
Well, and the whole idea of shoulds is maybe someone close to me thinks it's important, but I don't yet think it's important. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a should, it'd be a doing. So that process is giving them the option to decide, is this valuable to me? Is this, and then it moves off the should, it moves into this is what I want to do, instead of, well, Joe's telling me to do it, Sally's telling me what you might, whatever. So yeah, I love that.
I think too, what I think clients don't really understand is, or they don't have a clear idea of, is what do we really talk about in a coaching session? Because here we are, we're saying, well, we don't tell you what to do and we don't talk about what you should do.
So what are you talking about?
I was right. So now the poor client is thinking, well, I still have to spend 20 minutes with this coach. What are we going to talk about? So Leigh, do you think you could explain that? Like, how do we end up helping motivate that person, right? How do we end up getting them from where they are today to where they want to be?
And do we motivate them?
That's a good question too. Yeah, I think, so coaches who are listening to this know that coaches bring a variety of experience and background into the field. And at the same time, as when we have our coaching hat on, it is not the expectation or scope that we then turn our expertise or knowledge and background into how we work with a client, right? So I would say that there's that piece that can be challenging, right? Like that if you have coaches who are kind of focusing on one population of people, it can sometimes feel like, okay, they specialize in this. And in my opinion, I would say it's not that they specialize in an expert role. It's that, they've got a wealth of experience and understanding about how to work alongside someone and making change in that area. So for example, I would say, stress management, we can say, for example, like working alongside someone in that. You can have a bunch of expertise and understanding about that to know, okay, in my coaching hat, how can I work alongside someone to help them feel like they're making progress in this area while staying in a scope and not telling them what to do. So I think in coaching session, that unfolds as, okay, someone comes to you and they're wanting to sleep better because and that's kind of like, okay, I want to sleep better and you're going to tell me how to do that. Right. And so I think it's our to kind of peel back the layers on, okay, here's this big focus area. Right. And we peel back the layers and understand, okay, what are some barriers to them getting good quality sleep? What's going on in their life and how can they feel like they can make progress? So I think Sabryna, when you and I have talked about this before too, we facilitate that behavior change in an individual to feel like they're making steps to move forward and feel like they aren't stuck in where they are and they have self-efficacy and the confidence to say, okay, I can take, this step of finishing up my work at 7 p.m. versus midnight. I can do these things. These do feel doable to me. These are important to me as well. I don't know if that makes 100% sense, but yeah, I think we can bring like this wealth of knowledge in a sense that puts us in a certain space to know kind of how we can work with someone in that regard and what questions to ask while they have control over kind of where we go.
You're making me think that the other thing that we do with our clients is that we help them realize that it is a process and it's not black and white. It's not pass or fail. And so when they have tried things and it didn't go exactly as they planned, that was movement. That was still forward progress. That was learning. That was change. And I think when a client works on these things alone, they don't have that coach right there to shine a light on the fact that they are moving forward. Wait, you are learning. So what are your takeaways and what can you do differently next time? And so we really, Brad, I'm thinking about this. What coaches really do is they really help clients with their mindset.
For sure.
And, and just realize that they are making progress. And it's not going to be like 0 to 100 in a day, but that they are making forward progress.
You're helping them zoom out. When we zoom in, it increases stress. It increases focus on the wrong things many times. There are times we need to zoom in, but the coach, the way I'm hearing you describe it, they're helping them zoom out and see the bigger picture and the progress they have made. And instead of, I screwed up today, yeah, but let's look back at the last 3 months. Like, wow, this is amazing where you are today compared to 3 months ago. So yes, I love that concept. It feels like a zooming out process that you're giving them a new angle or a new perspective that it's hard for us to have on our own.
Exactly. We as humans are just wired for that negative bias and to focus on what we're doing wrong. And I think coaches really are right there as your partner to say, you're doing great. That's a step. That's progress. And look, you are better than yesterday, to quote someone who I know.
Okay, so that slightly different angle here. Just I'm going to build off of this. What about the person that says, I'm good? Like, I've got my exercise program. I've got my eating plan. I'm working the hours I want to work. Like, I'm good. I'm thinking of myself because we do a coach to the coach within our company. And I know that every single time for the last 17 years that we've been doing this, it's helped me in spite of my background and what I enjoy doing. But what do you say to that person who's listening to this because they listen to some of our other stuff and they just happen to pop this on and they're like, yeah, this is probably really good for our employees, or this is probably really good for my friend or my kid, but I'm good. What about when that person interacts with you, either in the networking setting that you talked about, Sabryna, and you're at the table with them and they're like, yeah, I don't think I could benefit. Where would that potential conversation go? And or if they're in an employee situation where they're asked to meet with a coach because of some requirement or an incentive that they have access to, but they're like, I'm good. Where do you go with that, either one of you?
That's so funny. I think there's two things. I think it just depends on the person, Brad. Of course, right? Everything we do depends on the person. But if it's someone who's pretty high performing already and they're like, I'm good. What could I possibly talk to you about? I always kind of say, wow, that's incredible. Like, high five for being like that amazing and having so many things going well. What inspires you? I'm guessing you're not just good. I'm guessing there's still, you want to be better based on what you've already accomplished. And typically if it's a, just maybe a C-suite, somebody from C-suite, I've had these funny conversations where I'm like, I am just about certain that you would never say that you're just good to any of your employees, and that you would tell your employees that you're good enough. So I think it is just kind of like saying, come on, what inspires you? I don't know. Leigh, what do you think?
No, I love that. And I think I'm thinking of two different maybe populations of people. One that's like high performing, everything is like a well-oiled machine when it comes to health and wellness. And I think I typically lean towards the how to maintain, like a maintenance standpoint, like supporting them in maintenance and planning for like, challenges that may come up. Or if they are like a high performing, busy individual, chances are there's something in the calendar coming up, like a big event or travel that we could work through. But I usually ask will you maintain this routine that you've had so much success with, and like build upon their strengths, but then be able to partner with them in a maintenance phase. So that's what I think about with those folks. The folks where they come to a session because they are like, I'm good. I don't want to work with a health coach, and this just seems uncomfortable. And like, I'm doing this because I want, my benefits kind of, approach. I take the approach in that regard of like, what would be best use of our time today? I want this to be as valuable as it can be. And like, what ideas do you have? And sometimes they'll have an idea, and it ends up being like, we're going to talk about football. And then we're talking about they're doing some work, at home, and then talking about how they've been staying up later. So then it webs into a conversation around lifestyle and well-being. But I think sometimes I'm just like, we're both here and, we have 25 minutes together or whatever. What would be the best use of our time? Because I want to make sure you're getting something out of it. So I kind of open the door for them in that regard.
I like that. I think on the performance side, for that high achiever, that person's trying to go next level, Sabryna, I think you're right. I think I fly with some pretty high performers in some of the things that I'm doing, and none of them are completely satisfied with where they're at. That's why they got there in the first place. And you're saying that in the way that you're describing this, but almost always it's the high performer that sees the opportunity for even better. I've got a chance to do this. I could have, I think if I could tweak a few things, maybe you could help. So my experience, and you two are far more experienced in this coaching than I am, but my experience in interacting with the high performers is they're the people that are looking for that next 1%, more so than the person that needs the 30% or the 70% or whatever. So I don't know if that's your experience on the performance side of health, wellness, and performance, but it seems like what you were talking about, Sabryna, is dead on.
You made me remember the question that I say with this type of person. I say, if you had more energy, what would you spend your energy on?
Yeah.
And then that's like, oh, whoa, okay. Because then, of course, I don't know about you, Leigh, but I feel like I have spent many a coaching session talking about energy management, but it is like, we actually do have the capacity, any one of us, to have more energy at any given time based on our lifestyle habits. And so for a person who's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, what? No. What if you had more energy? What would you do?
Right. That's
right.
Good.
Yeah. Built upon like possibility, right?
Yes.
Like, because like high performers, it's like they have had so much success, and they also love the idea of possibility and like what's next.
Totally.
And tapping into that. So yeah.
Oh, I just thought of a question for you, Leigh.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Should I be
because of the ever popular topic of artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Okay. Now this is like a new question that's starting to pop up. Why can't, if I'm a person out there, a skeptical client, why can't I just use an AI coach? Why can't I just tap into AI for coaching? I'm tapping into it for a lot of other things.
Yeah, great question.
Oh, I think we could have a whole other podcast episode on this. But,
to be continued. Dun, dun, dun.
Man, it is top of mind, right, in the healthcare field. I think that value in having digital like support and materials alongside your health journey, right? Like metrics, people who are looking at like their sleep quality, people who are tracking their workouts, people who are wanting to, gather that data and intel. And I think when it comes to AI in terms of a health coach, right? Like that while they can offer guidance or support or education, right? If you're exploring ideas about your health, what, in my opinion, is missed is like the human nuance of partnering together with an individual and a person. And like in coaching, whether it's you're doing phone coaching or video coaching, there's not this same level of human connection that working alongside, like working with a person, like with a coach on Zoom or on the phone, that AI has, in my opinion, because we notice the changes in how someone's talking, whether they take like a big sigh or whether they get more excited about something, or how they're kind of presenting in the space, or through like one of our skills of like this focused listening, like we're truly listening to how someone is, responding to a question and reflecting back to them. And sometimes in a different way than what we've heard, that then the client says, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was thinking. You couldn't, like, how did you know that?" And we say, we're just reflecting back what we hear, right? And so I think that there's that human connection in coaching that really, and we see, drives the needle forward in terms of people being successful in their health goals. And so, yeah, I think that the digital space misses out on that a little bit. So.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, Leigh, talking about the listening, because Brad, I don't know if you've ever heard us talk about this level 3 listening that we do as coaches. It is a skill that we use. We in a coaching session, we're listening, like Leigh said, to nuances, to emotion, to just even pauses. And there's just no way that AI is going to catch that kind of stuff. And we already know this, right? How many miscommunications are there from asynchronous communication of, texting and emailing? And the other thing I want to say is that AI, I've noticed, is also, they don't have that. There's a coaching quality called courage. And it's the courage to actually kind of maybe challenge a client. And I don't know about you with using AI, it's so friendly. It's so affirmative. Like, it doesn't want to, it just affirms everything you say. I remember challenging AI saying, "Wait, I gave you that information and you spit it back wrong." And it said, "Oh, you're right." I'm like, oh my gosh, it just tells me I'm right all the time. A really good coach has the courage to kind of reflect back to a client and say, "I hear you saying this and this, and there's a discrepancy." And a coach will point that out. A coach will challenge that. Whereas I don't think AI, in my experience, does that. Right? So again, it's that nuances.
Yeah, it makes me think about the time when a client did say exactly that. Like I had done what we call like a complex reflection, where there's these like conflicting things that we're hearing. And the client says at the end of our session, "Thanks so much for challenging me on that," because we got somewhere where, you start a coaching session, you think you're in one focus area and you end it in a different way, because of these connections that you build with your client and the rapport that you build and the things that you hear that are unsaid, basically, right? That allows them to feel more ownership of their next steps and excited. Like they're excited about next steps in a way that they might not have necessarily been before that session. So yeah, I think that the human connection piece can't be replaced, in my opinion.
Well, and it's the information versus application we talked about right out of the gate. It's, if you just want information, folks, you don't need a coach. That's readily available. But if you want to go beyond information, awesome. Keep it rolling, you two.
Well, I also wanted to say I don't know, Leigh, if you've ever had, clients are always curious, well, how does this coaching thing work? Like, can I just text my coach? And the answer to that, what has been your experience, Leigh, with that type of coaching communication?
Well, I will say that my coaching modality has been phone and video for the most part, with the exception of of COVID. So back in 2020, when we were all trying to kind of figure this out, I was in person with like a population of people, and then we quickly had to shift right to online. And there were some touch point or text check-in touch points, because that was kind of the option, right? That was through the program.
Sure.
And so I've got, kind of experience with that, and then experience with video and phone coaching. And I would say that for me, I mean, video and phone allows for, like we've been talking about, this human connection, these nuances that we hear, our ability to, have a conversation that feels like, okay, we start with a focus area. We dive into it, and we kind of like trickle down, and then we come up with some action steps sometimes, or some more clarity, like Brad was talking about, clarity and, okay, this is an area of focus I want to work on. And that can be extremely challenging to do in a text chain, to have that nuance or have that rapport building that I found. I think it can be valuable to check in between a session with a client, whether that's, I've had positive feedback from clients when I send them like a little follow-up, right? Of like, really enjoyed our session today. Here are the things we outlined, very brief, that allows them to have something if they want to circle back to it between our next visit. But that's not the only modality. That's like a little touch point to kind of bring things back to the top of the inbox per se, right? So that's top of mind for them.
There's no behavior change happening there.
No, it's a reminder. It's kind of like a cue. And most of the time we talk about it in the accountability and support part of the coaching conversation, right? It's like, okay, they've got these action steps. They've set like, okay, I'm going to walk for three days a week for 15 minutes at this time. And then we ask that all question of, okay, how will you hold yourself accountable? Right. So like that can sometimes involve a text or an email or whatever. But yeah, I think solely text-based coaching, it's really challenging to build that rapport and allow the client to really feel like they're connected to their steps and supported in the process, right? Like we're that support system.
Right.
And they're the ones taking the action.
There's just a different kind of engagement.
Figuring it out. Yeah. 100%.
With that type of communication.
I've got a quick one here based on what Leigh's just talking about with her example of, you're going to walk 3 times a week or whatever. So it seems like one of the big things that you're doing with folks is not just focusing on addition, but often providing the space for that addition to take place. So your question is not just, okay, you're committed to 3 times a week of walking. We all say stuff like that. It doesn't matter because there's no room for that addition unless there's a creation of margin through something else. So how often do your coaching sessions spend as much time or more on subtraction or helping create margin to allow this new vision that they've created for themselves to actually become reality instead of just another discouraging, I screwed up moment in their life?
I think it's so funny. You're kind of making me think, okay, the person said, I'm going to walk 3 times a week.
All the time.
Okay, done, right? Like
January 1st.
What do you mean done? Like the person leaves their coach from that and it's like, what? What we spend time in the coaching session is not so much coming up with I'm going to walk 3 times a week. It's more of why? Why is that? Why is that important to you again? And what will your life look like when you do that walking 3 times a week for 3 months, 6 months? Right. So we don't focus on that. That's not what the coach focuses on. The coach focuses on, helps the client remember why it's important to them. How is their life going to change when they keep doing that?
Who they're becoming as a result.
Yes. So that's the beauty. That's the meat of the coaching conversation. Right. And yes, we can talk about to make sure the likelihood that they can do the walking 3 times a week, but it's also like getting it inside of them, making them connect to why that's important to them. that small
why
step.
it's important, and then how it can be implemented. I think
for
is
them specifically, not for some generic person that AI is talking to, but for their life in particular.
Right. Like how, and how I implement walking versus how Sabryna implements, or how Brad, like it's all going to look different. And that's what is between like giving someone a plan or educating them on the benefits of walking versus working alongside them, like Sabryna said, to understand, okay, what is important to you about this? What does it feel like on the days that you are able to walk? And how are you able to do that in a sustainable way? So it's just a beautiful process when you see that versus like option 1 or option 2, right? When you see option 2, and option 2 is like this transformational process for an individual to say, this is important to me. This is how it's going to look. And also the permission to be flexible with it, like possibility, curiosity, and being flexible, I think, like cornerstones of coaching in a relationship.
Love it.
So now I'm curious. I want us to kind of help our clients realize, or just help people realize, how do I know if you're any good, Leigh?
Yeah. There's a coach around every corner. So how do we figure out how to pick a coach?
Take my word for it. No.
Yeah, that's right. I'm good on social media. That's why.
I would, there are, I think Sabryna and Brad will have some different pieces to this too. But for me, it's, wanting to find, if you're looking for a coach, you're wanting to find someone that has a certification, in some capacity, because we talked a lot about how we partner alongside a client and help them get from point A to point B and meet them where they are. And we're not here to just throw education at you and tell you, okay, this is what you're doing. However, when you are looking for someone to work with, the health coaching process, is a evidence-based way of working alongside a person to improve their health. So like you're wanting someone to have that basic foundation of those principles that we've kind of been talking about. Like you're wanting them to have gone through what we consider kind of a rigorous training to understand, okay, how can they successfully work alongside me to help me reach my health goals? And through that, I think, is through a certification and training of the skills that, we don't necessarily maybe talk about in a coaching session of like, okay, here's the part of the coaching session where I'm going to ask open-ended questions, but it's, we are skilled in like the way, right? The way that we're working with someone, that we don't just step into this. It takes time, it takes growth, and it takes training to do what health coaches do. And, there are a bunch of different certifications out there, but yeah, I'd say training and certification with these skills from an accredited training program is step 1. I think if you're like looking for a health coach.
Right. And I think people need to realize that what the coaches are an expert in is behavior change. So that's where we are different than a certified personal trainer. And you might have coaches that are also certified personal trainers. But if you are really looking for behavior change experts, this is where the coaching training program and certification comes into play.
And it's easy to check. I mean, just where were you trained? What are your certifications? What are you bringing to the table? Because everyone, as we've slightly joked about, the word coach is not owned by anybody. It's your volleyball coach from high school. It's your college football coach, and it's a board certified health, wellness, performance coach, and they're all called the same thing. And so anyone can call themselves a coach, and people, the charisma seems to carry the day temporarily, and they look good on social media, or they're great runners, or hybrid athletes or whatever, and you're like, oh, I want to be like that person. That ain't going to happen. I hate to break the news to you. So you want somebody that is trained in what Sabryna's describing, behavior change specialist, because that's what you're looking for. You're looking to take things to the next level or a different level or a new level or a new direction or a new journey or whatever it is that you're seeking this coach for. You want somebody that can take you down that path. You don't want somebody that just looks good in a swimsuit or, can do a bench press with an extra 100 pounds. So keep that in mind in terms of the background. Social media is necessary. Very good coaches are using social media, and don't stop there.
And it's okay to change your coach. I mean, if you start to feel like your coach seems to be telling you what to do, that you might want to switch. That might be, a red flag that person really isn't using behavior change principles.
Right.
So
yeah, I think that's a good point too that you bring up, Sabryna, is, I would encourage people to get on a call with an individual. Make sure, ask about credentials, make sure that they are, behavior change specialists. They've got this foundation of understanding and training to be a coach, and also developing good rapport with a coach. Just like any other practitioner that you're working alongside, you want it to be a good fit. Just like we as coaches want it to be a good fit with a client. I know in my coaching career, there have been times where it does not feel like a good fit, and that's okay. Both from the coach's perspective, it's more in private practice, right? Like if you're, you can decide whether it's a good fit. So I'd encourage people too, looking for a health coach. Yes, you want them to be credentialed, and B, you also want to make sure it's a good fit. Hop on a call with them, like either phone call or Zoom chat, just to see if it's a good fit. And like Sabryna said, you can, switch around. You can look at different coaches. You want it to be someone that you feel like is a true partner with you.
Great suggestion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Brad, have we not answered a question that you're thinking about? Leigh.
Yeah, I think you've covered most of what we came in here, because we've talked about what are you looking for in a coach, whether you're an employer, an EAP, an individual, et cetera. What can you expect from a coach? What's the differentiator? If you're a coach out there, how can you differentiate yourself from other people that are calling themselves coaches? What to emphasize out there in the public besides charisma elements? I think we've covered most of it. I'll give a shameless plug for Catalyst Coaching. We've got a thing called Catalyst Elite. So if you're out there listening, you're saying, I kind of try this thing out. We have recently launched we've been doing this 20 years for employees around the country. And we recently launched an option for folks that are not working with companies that work with us to be able to tap into our coaching. So if you're curious about that, we're not going to talk more about this. Just reach out to us, results@catalystcoaching360.com, and we'll get you the info. So I'll leave that piece at that right there. But is there anything else from maybe what you two have learned? You've both been coaching a long time. You are at the top of the hill in terms of skill and background and credibility and experience. Is there maybe a nugget that it surprises you as you come out of coaching sessions where you go, that was so cool. And it was so cool because X. Is there something like that pops into your head that folks might get to see into your brains as you're doing the coaching with your extensive backgrounds, and you go, oh, it's every single time it happens, it just blows me away. Anything like that?
I mean, I would say that the thing that I love most about being able to coach people is that it completely provides hope to people who have been stuck for so long. And it's because they just didn't really know that. They're like, why can't I do these things? Why do all these people keep telling me to do these things and I can't do them? And I will say, work with a coach, and they're like, I can do it. So that's my favorite thing about being a coach, a health and wellness coach.
Hope. I so love that word. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think that's something that's missing in the world right now. People just feel like I'm checking boxes. I'm surviving the day. I'm just going from, morning alarm, 3 snooze buttons, coffee, car, desk, back home, Netflix, bed, rinse and repeat. And you bring up this idea of hope. There could be more. There could be less. There could be better. There could be Sabryna, that's the word. Leigh, how about you?
Oh, I think I was trying to think of some different examples, but I would say I had a coaching session where at the end a client said the solution was in me the whole time. And you helped me find that again. And so I think that, we talk about, partnering and working alongside a client. And I think that is a super, just honored to be part of that part of a process for someone, because it's like this acknowledgement that they needed the partnership to find that within them again. And they also have increased their confidence because it was within them the whole time. And it's like a super cool thing to see working with people. But yeah, it was like one client and she was like, it's been within me the whole time. Yeah. And I just laughed. And that's where you're like, pause.
Yes.
Yes. No, that's it. But yeah, when people have that light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, I can do this. And I've got the tools and the strength and the ideas to make a difference in my own life. I think that's the moment. And that's what's so cool about health and wellness coaching.
That is awesome. And one or both of you mentioned at the very beginning how we all have so many experts in our lives. And the thought in my head, and I didn't voice it at the time, was, and yet the single biggest expert, it's right there in the mirror. But we don't realize it. We don't tune into it, or we don't pause long enough to have that. And just that chance to first be seen, have a sense of hope, and then have that reflect. Yes, that's fantastically. You two, thank you for doing this. Again, this is challenging. You don't know what's going to be brought up and what questions are out there. And you both did a great job. So thank you. Really appreciate it. And I know it's going to help a lot of folks.
Yay. Yeah, thanks for having us on, Rod.
We're just catalysts for change.
That's right. Well said. Thank you, too. A big thanks to Sabryna and Leigh. Love the way they prepared for this. It was their concept. They brought it all together. And I think it's really helpful to hear that conversation versus just reading about it somewhere else. So big thanks to the two of them. Thank you for joining us here on the Coaching Lab podcast. We really appreciate it. You have so many options of podcasts, and we're grateful that you've chosen to spend part of your week here with us. If you have any questions on the coaching front, whether it's seeking some ideas on the employee benefits side for your EAP services or what you're providing to your employees to help improve their lives, you can reach out to us about that. Results at catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Or if you're thinking, you know what, this is different. I'm thinking I want to move into a coaching role and I want to be one of those credible coaches. I'd like to learn more about that. Same thing, reach out to us. Happy to chat through what that involves. And frankly, whether it's the right fit for you or not, based on what you're trying to achieve. We can walk you through all of that. Same email, results at catalystcoachinginstitute.com, and we'll set up some time to talk or trade emails, whatever your preference is. And now it's time to be a catalyst. This is Dr. Brad Cooper of Catalyst Coaching. Thank you for joining us here on the podcast, and we'll talk to you next time.